Okay, so usage is the other. The facility need factor, again, is a specialty type situation which we did not use, and I won't go into. And parcel elevation factor, however, is a factor used on the main open ditch. And again, with the elevation factor, there's a sheet in here on elevation. What we basically do is, again, is going to go back to your soil survey map in a sense. If you look at the, right here, your yellow soils are going to be your high elevation, your clarion type soils. What shows up in gray here is going to be like your Nicolette soils. Well, those soils are naturally going to have elevation relief compared to basically the open ditch facility. So usage, we look at how deep did the open ditch have to be to provide an outlet to that given ground. Well, if I'm sitting up here 30 feet higher than what the open ditch, I didn't need that ditch to be 10 feet deep to provide me an outlet. But the lands that are served by the tile systems needed basically that ditch to be that deep to get an outlet for the tile system.
With all that said, when you go into percentages, then are you doing it by 40s then, or because you can break it down so far? How far down do you?
Going back to this map now with LiDAR, getting back to that flow path type map. Actually, through the computer, we are evaluating an elevation to each individual one of these
really
little
great catching on them.
So what we do is actually compute back 1/10th percent grade a elevation back to the point of where the water is leaving the field, and then for what we look at is how much elevation did I need from this location to get me on a 1/10% grade an outlet. And then if I'm above that in increments of so many feet increments, I get a decrease in regard to basically a elevation factor. So I decrease the benefit I got by the fact that I'm higher than what I needed. And that is weighted out then for each 40-acre tract. It might be 10 different parcels in that 40 that are getting computed, and then it's an average weighting to those parcels.
So you average back to the 40 then?
To the parcel, because everything has to come back to a classification for that given 40-acre tract, or if it's a property divide, a sub-parcel of that 40. Okay. Those are the factors that are used. I'm going to, as we just go through this now, we're going to, again, we looked at the flow path. Here is the soil map, basically showing you the soils involved out there. And then the next sheet is this wetness factor. The wetness factor basically is this weighted average based upon my soil types out there, what my wetness factor for that given tract or ground shows. Okay? The color scheme there is, if you want to go back one, the wetness here. So the blues are my basically wettest soils. They got the highest wetness factor. The yellows are my least wet soils. So if I'm got a high ridge out there, mostly clarion soils, I'm going to have a lot less wetness factor than if I got a big okoboji. And where would you expect in this watershed? We know that the relief line was put in to serve these impoundment areas up here at the top end of the district. Well, that's where you naturally see the majority of your blue soils are actually here. Also, you'll notice that Drainage District 39, this separate tile here, basically, lo and behold, there's sloughs in here that were served specifically by this Drainage District 39 tile system. And so it's obvious that you can see why the tile system was put in there. Proximities, again, what you would expect. The closer I am to the open ditch facility, basically is going to increase my proximities. And so the ground immediately above the open ditch, basically proximity-wise, actually their water is all concentrated in this area, and the outlet is real, basically brought right up to them, so they get high proximities. And as I move away, my proximity, the distance, I have to bring my own water to get there, or through another facility to get there, the lower my proximity is going to be, the farther out I get. So this ground way up here at the top end of the old tile main, basically is proximity to the open ditch drops off. Then you go to use factor again. Where does my water actually enter the open ditch? Well, everything in blue you can see is above the open ditch, and all of its water basically is using, or it's using 100% of the open ditch for an outlet. Okay? Then you go to runoff factor. That there map is just a map showing you basically the agricultural ground is considered to have a runoff factor of 1. If I am a acreage out there, building site acreage, I'm going to have a runoff factor of 1.3 assigned to me, similar to a gravel road.
What's the 1.1?
And then this here is a weighted, the 1.1 is the airport property that you're seeing. And the airport property is, what we did was took an actual percentage of the pavement out there in comparison to the grass ground, and went through a weighting process, and then we used that average across any of the property that the airport had. Okay? And then elevation factor, again, that one is only used on the main open ditch, and we go through and compare that elevation to the open depth of the open ditch, and looking at how much of the depth of the ditch that I need. And then the last sheets there, you get into the classification. So the classification is based upon all those factors put into the spreadsheet and computed out for each one of the parcels of ground. That parcel of ground then, the classification is an actual, we compute those out in assessable units. The assessable units basically show the amount, the number, the numerical number of each one of those properties' factors multiplied out. And then we look down that column to find the highest assessable units in the whole watershed. That parcel then is the 100% classification property. And then everybody's compared to that on a percent basis. So if I got a 30% classification, I am computed to have 30% of the need of the 100% parcel. So this schedule is a true comparison in that watershed of the properties against each other. Flipping past that, let's just...
What's that?
This is just an assumed $10,000 schedule, and so that people could see how they would compare to each other on a $10,000 schedule. I don't even know, I think we're gonna probably stop even doing it, because it really doesn't mean a lot. And then we tell the landowners, well, if it was a $100,000 project, it's 10 times that number, so they can kind of get themselves into the ballpark as to what their cost is. The classification per acre is the true comparison that we use out in the field to compare each parcel of ground against each other. In that schedule, the class per acre, we are taking ditch.
It's the very high one, let's get it there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the promises.
Yeah, top one's 196.
No, east of, section 5.
Well, the class per acre basically is if I have a parcel of ground that has 45 acres in it instead of 40. Acres is part of my, my benefit acres is part of my classification. That parcel naturally is going to have a higher classification because I got more benefited acres. So when we go to class per acre, it's a increment of 1 acre apiece. So it's an easier way for the landowners to compare their benefit against their neighbor. And so basically then you start looking out in the field. What we do is do spot checking of these class per acres. We go look at grounds at the bottom end, different locations all the way along the system, looking to see if this comparison looks equitable to each other. It's a way of spot checking if there is an input error or flow path error or those type of things that have occurred, that it's a way for us to check ourselves and make sure that we haven't made some kind of obvious input error. The easy way to do this then with these maps is, you look at this given piece of ground against the other guy and say, why is there this difference? Well, you go back and look at wetness factor, you look at your runoff factor, you look at your proximity factors. And those, you should be able to justify why there's a difference between that given property based upon the maps that you have up front of it. And that's how we go through with the commissioners and do a check against ourselves. Okay? The end result then is that classification is what we have for the main open ditch. I have not made copies for you on all this other, but then we have to do that same process for each one of the tile systems. So we go through that same process for the tile main. The tile main, we're looking at the flow paths to the tile system. We're looking at the proximities, the proximity factor and everything to just that given chunk of ground on the tile main. We have a class per acre sheet that we would generate then for comparing those people to basically the usage and everything along this stretch of the tile system. We do that was the tile main. These are the grounds that are benefited. One thing I want to point out to you is you'll notice that 21, the board made the decision that 21 was standing on its own. Even though back in the 20s, when there was a lawsuit and a settlement, 21 was combined and helping pay for all the facilities in Drainage District 73. Even though the only thing that 21 got out of basically the new tile relief line being installed was basically it's tied in way up here at the top end and they used to dump into an open ditch. The relief line put in a chunk of tile and closed that open ditch for a distance of a few hundred feet. So 21, the board's decision at the hearing on the engineer's report was that 21 is going to stand on its own. They take care of their own tile system, and that they were not included in any of the facilities of Drainage District 73. Theoretically, we could have went through a classification for them like a separate lateral using, this little stretch of tile down here. But, they don't get any benefit from the main open ditch, this tile main, none of this tile here. All they would have had was a little benefit to that very bottom end of the system on the relief line only. So they are excluded, they're not paying for anything in DD 73. At the time 73 or the relief line was put in, they really didn't need to be involved, and why they got sucked into the whole process here, I think it was very inequitable to what happened to 21. 21 has been helping pay for the facilities of 73 ever since, but 21 was also maintaining its own tile system under its own schedule. So the intent by the court was that 21 was been dissolved and done away with, but that never took place. The schedule stayed intact, so 21 was always maintaining their own tile by themselves, but also paying the open ditch clean out. When their water came in to come close to draining that way, they were helping pay for that. So that has been rectified. Again, this original district the overall district started out as Drainage District 3, with the relief line then being brought in, and the overall district getting renamed 73, and 3 was basically done away with. So Sac County doesn't have a Drainage District 3 in existence. Okay, so those lands are the ones that pay for in a sense, the combined relief system. And then the last one is the schedule to the tile lateral. And only these grounds up above here pay for the upkeep of this tile, stretch of tile. Because if I'm here, I'm not getting any benefit from this piece. Okay, that is the map process. In front of you are the report. I'm going to ask if you could just to read through this written portion of the report and then ask me if you have any questions on that portion of the report.
When you went back to do your spot checks, did you have anything?
We found a piece of ground that basically we had grading. It showed like there was a culvert in a given location that it wasn't. And so basically we had a piece of ground draining in the wrong direction, and it was actually getting included in the tile lateral and tile system that it shouldn't have been. And then we also found, we had questions regard to a flow path down below, which checked out, which wasn't a problem. And then the other thing that we found is, on the soil maps, the modified ground at the airport, if it's been graded, they give it a soil map number 5040. And the drainage need factor there was incorrect because under the tables for that given soil, there isn't anything because it's a modified, man-modified soil. So they don't know what to classify. So we had to go back and estimate the types of soil that were native underneath of that to come up with a true wetness factor for the airport. So we caught that actually in the field as we were doing a check.
I'm just, in the north part of that, I'm glad to see that that's now corrected.
In regard to 21.
Yeah.
And, the fact that these schedules are broken up, from what they were. Like I said, before if I'm way down at the bottom end and there was a problem on the tile system, under the 73 schedule, you help pay for everything. It doesn't matter if it's a repair up at the tile or repair on the open ditch. Now, everybody gets a benefit from the open ditch. But if I'm way down towards the bottom end and I'm helping pay for tile repair way up at the top end, well, I don't get any benefit from that. And so the fact that the schedules get broken up into basically lateral schedules and stuff makes the schedules applicable to the landowners involved. Okay, the report basically tries to give a little bit of the history of the fact that 21, we talk about the 21. We also note in there that Drainage District 39 is a contained district in there. We also identify that there are 4 separate schedules involved in this classification, and basically lists the factors, in a sense, the factors that every parcel is evaluated based upon, the 4 factors that we covered. Behind that then, what you have is an overall, this is the map we should have started with, initially, but this shows you the main open ditch, the tile main, the tile system, and then the tile lateral. So that gives an overall view of the district itself. Then behind that will be the main open ditch assessment schedule. So we're showing that that's the facility involved basically with the classification. These are the acres that are benefited. And then separately, there's the actual schedule is back there that lists the acres of benefit, the classification, and then dollar assessment.
Is that per acre, that dollar assessment?
No, that is a total dollar based upon the total dollar amount of the schedule.
Of the original construction schedule.
Of the original construction schedule. So if you go to the end for the main open ditch, we have to go back. We were able to find in the original establishment records cost to the main open ditch and to the tile main because it was done at the same time. We then had to go back on a percent basis and split what was the tile main off of that original construction and separate those aspects. We were able to find yardage excavation and what they paid to a cubic yard to help us tighten up that split between the open ditch and the tile main. Then, so the schedule amount is that original improvement amount, which is only $7,000 some dollars. So if you were doing a $70,000 project, you would take your piece of ground and multiply that number by 10 to come up with the dollars you're gonna pay for that given piece of ground. So it's only a factor carried forward because of that 25-75% requirement when you have to go to a hearing process. If I exceed that 25% of this number for a repair, I have to go to hearing. If I exceed it by 75% of that number on an improvement, I have to go to hearing. So it's almost now, I mean, it's almost automatic. You know, you're going to have to go to hearing anything you want to do out there of any major dollars. Next behind that would be, you know, the tile main, and again, that just shows you individually the facility and the acres involved. And the tile system would be the next one behind that. And then basically the tile lateral is the final one. So the individual plat with the schedules are actually bound up and included in that. What we are asking for today then is for the board to tentatively approve the commissioner's report and to set a hearing on this commissioner's report, which has to be set out there 40 days beyond today.
You done the date
I have
calculation?
not, but I have my calendar.
Just one on the wall already.
Okay, so we are sitting on the 10th, and so we got 21 days in May, so June, we'd have to be out basically 19 days in June. So it looks like June 21st would be the first available Tuesday for the hearing.
Which we would do in the afternoon, like at 1 or 1:30.
That would be correct.
I will make the motion to...
When's that District 3 ISAC?
23rd.
Okay. Okay.
That's on that, yeah, okay.
I will make the motion to tentatively approve the commissioner's reclassification report and schedule the hearing date for June 21st at 1:30, or is that 1 or 1:30?
What works better for it?
Either one's fine.
1:30 works better.
Okay. I'll make it 1:30 in the afternoon.
These figures here are the total where you take this,
Right. For that given piece of ground then,
their assessment's $157.
they're $157 of just that. I mean, that's the dollar amount you would start with. The total amount of the schedule being $12,000 for this schedule. If I was doing a $120,000 project, I would be paying 10 times that for that 38.79 acres.
That number there is just the first construction number that now, that's how they divide the percentages. That was the first construction numbers, and now you take it, multiply it times whatever is factor you need to get to the total project cost.
All it does is change the original assessment amount for that parcel, per se.
Yeah.
Still working with
Yeah,
those
what you're
original
doing,
dollars.
that
You're
is
just
really,
moving-
if you ignore the fact that it's even dollars, it's just a numerical number that you use to determine how many, when you set a levy, you're setting a levy in regard to how many times this total number at the end of the schedule you need to pay for the project. So if you're doing just 100% levy, you would be raising $12,000. If you're doing a 200% levy, you're raising 24. Well, that'd be 2 times then, basically, these numbers to come up with the total dollars I'm gonna pay.
And those just give you that multiplying number for your percentage of the total cost of that.
That's correct.
So how much does the reclassification cost? Is that?
How much is the total reclassification? I haven't done that. For the hearing, we will make a breakout as to the dollars that will be, the only dollars that will be spread on the, we did the repair to the open ditch. So only the people, I mean, everybody in the watershed is going to pay for some portion of the cost of the repair. Okay? But on the tile lateral schedules, they will only pay a cost for the reclassification. And we split that, we just take the total cost of the reclassification and the acres of each one of the schedules and split that cost out to each one of the schedules. And so you could, in this district, get assessments on 4 different schedules. If I'm at the top end of that tile system, I'm gonna help pay for the main open ditch, the repair work, but I'm gonna help pay for a reclassification cost on the tile main, the tile system, and the tile lateral.
Anything that you use.
That's correct.
Do we need a second on the motion for the,
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, all ayes. Public hearing will be 1:30 on June 23rd.
Okay, I'm going to gather these back up. Renee's going to have,
Do you want those too?
yes, I'll take those back. Do you want factors?
No.
Okay, I'll pull all this back and then we'll have this stuff available at the hearing again. And the commissioners, the commissioners are going to stop in, Dennis Henrich is going to stop in today and sign the commissioner's report. Graham Hogue was the other commissioner, he won't be available till tomorrow, he'll stop in and sign it. So Renee will have the copies down there to sign. I needed to ask the question, have you had a chance to talk to Mary, 251?
Mary Hilbert?
Number.
In what regard?
Did she ever sign for that determination, do you know?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
We just received another one in the mail today, and I'm not quite sure.
It appeared, we only had 2 landowners that hadn't signed up.
This is, and I don't know why we just received that one, but that came in the mail this week.
Oh, she personally sent this in.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Who mailed this? The NRC's did. Had they been sending you?
No. Jack handed that to me this morning, and I thought that was kind of strange, and told Dean that we had received it.
Who's this Helmberg?
That's Mary's mother-in-law. And I think there's a small parcel that just caught the corner of.
And she owns that separate from Mary?
Yes.
Okay. There should be a map.
Yeah, there is.
Okay. And that's all BC. The NRCS, unless she signed a form saying that she authorized the release of this to the supervisors. See, the NRCS they won't release these unless the owner physically signs those.
That was the first one we received.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's no
We
use
have,
to us.
the landowners have been, we've gotten probably 4 or 5 that the landowners have sent in directly to us. We've asked them in that original letter for them to submit it. And then, see, the NRCS wouldn't even tell, all we wanted to know was originally, how many how many landowners had signed up for a determination. They wouldn't even tell us that number. We went to Sioux City, or by phone, Greg talked to the area conservationists. Oh, no, we can't release it. And that's bullcrap. I mean, that is totally bullcrap. Well, the DC finally here just a week ago or whatever, Greg had checked with him again, and he said, yeah, we got 9 people signed up, and we're missing 2. Okay, that's all we wanted to know, We just wanted to know if we only had 3 signed up, we got a bigger issue than.
Well, the other part of that is even the couple that we don't have should maybe have a second contact in case they didn't recognize.
And that's the problem, we have no way without personally calling each one of these to find out who that
Who
is.
those 2 are.
Right. But the good news is, it's only 2, and we were thinking that Mary might be one of them, but if she's told you.
I believe she, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe she did.
Okay,
And if she encouraged her mother-in-law to do that, I assume that she did. So,
yep. Well, that's good news. The thing that we'll have to decide, now it's a matter of, well, we know that the people in general support at least the fact that they went in and get their wetland determinations done. We won't know how many acres of wetland are involved until we get the determinations.
well, and then also how you deal with them.
Right. Then what we'll have to do is turn around and talk to the NRCS and ask, and again, this is one of these, they make it absolutely impossible for a district to function as a district because only the individual landowner is supposed to be able to request a scope and effect determination. Now we get the wetland determination. Now to determine if our improvement is going to actually affect that given wetland, the landowner is supposed to sign a request for a scope and effect determination. Instead of us showing them the plan, this is what we want to do, here are the wetlands. Now, tell us if we're, if it's going to affect that. Well, they're saying now, they used to allow us to do this. Now they're saying, oh, well, we can't make that scope effect determination. The landowner has to request that. So, it's just a struggle every step of the way to get anywhere with it. But I guess the question that comes down to is, it'll probably be mid to later summer before we get all the determinations that the NRCS has done.
And that has to be okay. We just have to go on their time schedule and,
Okay.
we're not gonna change it, so.
It's looking favorable in regard that, in general, the landowners appears to be that they would be reasonably supportive of the improvement project. So the real question that comes into play with the road N28 being tore up, and again, the cost of the new tile underneath that road realistically comes back to secondary roads. But the decision would be, do the board and with Ron make the decision to go ahead and put an additional tile?
With that being torn up, that could be installed for 1/3 the cost of waiting, and
That's correct.
I think that's a reasonable assumption that if you could lay that across there at a fraction.
Well, that's what Ron needs from the board then, is direction is, do we have we will have to confirm where we think we want to put this thing.
Well, that's the next part of it. I guess a question, one of the biggest questions would be, what's the cost going to be to secondary roads to install that, to be used, possibly used, or not to be used? And then you got to weigh that against the ability to install it at a fraction of the cost versus what it might be if you had to bore it or something.
So it appears that the landowners at least went for the wetland determination. So we're assuming, based upon that, they wouldn't object or remonstrance from an improvement, is kind of, or the only way to know for sure is to proceed with, with the fact that we know we got landowners basically at least getting a wetland determination, for us to proceed with the engineer's report instead of formal hearing, which then they can do a remonstrance.
I think the more urgent and concerning factor is the consideration of whether secondary roads puts that tile across.
Right.
Because when that's torn them out, I guess I would like to understand what the cost might be to lay that in now, or delaying it till you have final approval to do the project.
Well, Ron would probably be able to give us that figure.
Well, but he would need an indicator of what size that crossing might need to be.
Yes, we've already given him that.
You have.
Yeah. From the original study that was done back,
How big what is it? 20?
We just said secondary
I
roads.
think it was 24 if I remember right. But
We just indicated secondary roads could put a steel pipe across.
Yeah. What? Not for a distance. So, well, I suppose it'd be as trustees, you can make that decision if you felt like, the secondary road's only responsible for a steel pipe and the district wants a concrete, that the district would have to pick up the extra cost for doing it. You guys got both caps, you can wear both of them.
Either way, it's all left.
Yeah. That steel one will take care of that, right?
Still wouldn't take that.
So
Yeah, I guess we were discussing, what size pipe did we say?
I think it's a 24. I have to.
We were talking
About
about
100 feet, 24 inch pipe.
So we had talked to Ron. Ron had asked that question. He has the sizing that we had from the original 93 whatever report. We have not gone back and tried to do any kind of additional review or anything, but that's a pretty big pipe.
We better put that on the agenda next week. Discussion.
Well, I guess we need to, I guess we can discuss it, but we need to, I want to hear what he projects the cost might be to lay that across there now versus waiting to see if...
You could,
Well, he can
request
by next week.
oh yeah. Because what he's going to do is take a jack and bore. If you've had a jack and bore project in the last year or whatever on our road.
We really haven't much of anything that I'm aware of.
What we do up on the Nemo Road from that.
Oh, when they bored in our pipe.
No, but we repaired that. Well, I don't know.
But the road caved in, so they had that all dug out.
Yeah, that was open.
Yeah, that was open.
Well, and I mean, the DOT average costs, we have some jack and bore, or, that's right, I mean, you can just call and get a quote from somebody for a jack and bore, 24 inch.
Do you want us to make that contact to get that done, or do you want to do it?
Well, I think Ron's going to want to hear, or at least have Jim just contact Ron and tell him that the board wants him to proceed with a cost estimate.
I'll call him.
Okay.
All right, we'll do that. We'll move forward with that.
Okay.
Because I think cost estimate is important.
And
That's,
we can, you know, I'm sure Ron will then follow, well, I'm gonna be dropping some stuff off to him anyway, so I can follow up with him as to what he needs from us. I think the only thing he's gonna need is, we're doing all this.
You know, it's our option. Go ahead and dig one in and assume that the project will move forward. But we don't want to weigh the cost of, you know, we do it now with an open ditch, you know, what that would cost, and what would cost if we did it later with the board. And then if we have that information, we can weigh that and make a decision. But, yeah, 24-inch concrete.
I'll verify that.
Yeah, Ivan just said that he'll verify that. But you asked about that, and we might as well, you know, make a decision about that one way or the other. Yeah. Well, I guess whether we do it next week or whenever, why don't you move forward with it, and when you're ready to bring it to the board, put it on the agenda. Okay?
Be part of the engineers report.
Release later.
I don't know.
Don't be taking our
Okay.
equipment.
Well, you
Well,
can
that's it.
just fax that.
I assume they came up nice.
They did, they're not.
We probably paid for them.
Yeah,
Indirectly.
I talked to Mike yesterday about.
It's the executive.
I think it's
executive summary.
Yeah, right.
Executive
Well, I
summary.
think they want to
Your
do-
classification is going to.
People are always leaving.
Been left with you. As
I know.
And I got a whole bunch in the other room too.
That whole booklet. Okay.
Keeping you busy, Ivan?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Getting some warm weather,
Yeah,
maybe
okay,
we can
thanks.
get construction going.
Bye. Yeah, he's gonna go ahead with that.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
and he wanted to, he made the comment, he's not sure he's got the final elevations of the.
Yeah, and that's,
Oh, the final top elevations,
Yeah.
he doesn't know yet.
Yeah.
But,
that really won't matter. won't it?
I
He
mean,
just said it.
he's gonna be, the difference between the costs is gonna be very, very close. I mean, no matter if it's a foot off or not.
I think it's,
Because-
I think we ought to go ahead and do it. We're gonna save. a lot
I
of
think you ought to
money.
look, I think seriously consider it anyway, just for, because I'm guessing that boring thing is a 4-to-1 deal.
It'd be nice, if we knew how many acres of wetland were gonna be involved, which is gonna be kind of really the determining factor, you know, cost-wise, where the project's gonna fall in. You know, we can get a pretty good handle of costs, you know, in regard to, you know, the tile system, relief system itself, but it's the wetland factor that comes into play.
Yes and no, though, but wasn't he receptive to making an evaluation and throttling those, so you didn't improve?
Each individual landowner that would have a affected wetland would have to make that decision. Who was he?
Well, I thought the last time you had visited with us, when we had an informal discussion about it, at that meeting, there was at least some consideration of not doing the mitigation, that you could throttle.
The NRCS will accept that,
Yeah.
but then we would have to go through a process of each one of the landowners that would have a wetland
To agree to that?
to agree to that.
Okay. Well, I knew that was part of the discussion. I wanted to at least be sure that we were thinking.
We need a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Dean seconded.
Go ahead to second, Jack.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.
Okay.
As he is here.
Or noon.